All right. Well, welcome back to Always on the Hunt. Today we have a special guest who built his career working for some of the most largest and most respected brands in the AV industry. We're talking about Sony, Sharp, NEC, Wirestorm, all before he made the big leap and co-founded his own integration company, Pixel Audio Video. Mark Knox has spent over 20 years in the industry across education, house of worship, large venue display environments. But today we're not just going to be talking about his career or manufacturing side. We're going to focus on the decision to bet on himself and what it takes to start an integration business, the challenges, the pressure, the mistakes, and what makes it at the end of the day worth it. So, of course, we'll talk about leadership, career growth, his experience navigating the industry, and the lessons learned and applied, and whether you're early in your career and thinking about making that type of move as well. Hopefully, you'll be able to pull some insight from today's conversation. So, with all that being said, Mark, welcome to Always on the Hunt.
Hey, man, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
20 years. Every time I hear somebody say that out loud, I'm like, geez.
Yeah.
Where did time go? But yeah, man, it's been an interesting ride. I'm anxious to get into it with you.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about having you on as a guest. Like you and I have worked together, professionally as a candidate of mine in the past, and being able to help you in your career. And I've always been very impressed with what not just what you've accomplished, but what your reputation was or is in the industry, and how well respected and admired you are. And anytime I talk, your name comes up, it's always like, oh man, that dude's the best, So happy to have you on, and excited to have the listeners get to know you a little better as well. So I kind of want to start from the beginning. Like, how did you get into the AV industry to begin with?
Yeah, honestly, I think I got in how most people get in. It is by accident.
Right.
You get to a point for me where I had graduated from high school. I was about to enter college, and I just needed something to do on the weekends and maybe, summer break. And I couldn't really make any real job commitments, right? Because I was in school.
Yeah.
Had an opportunity to join a company called, at that time, Custom Home Innovations.
Okay.
To just basically pull wire, right? And do some finish install work, hang some TVs, things like that. That's how I got my introduction into the industry.
Right.
I did that all the way through college. And then when I graduated from college in 2007 from Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio, I became project manager for Custom Home Innovations, was then turned into 360 Technology Group. We were flying high. We were doing our thing. And then, 2009, 2010 came, the housing market went just to the toilet.
Right.
And we had some tough decisions to make. And I had some connections in the industry, but they weren't quite developed, right? But I knew I had to do something. And that's where Enterprise Rent-A-Car came in. And I know where, that management trainee program for me was huge, man, because it's like an MBA in a box, right? You really get to learn how to run $1 million branch, how to run $1 million organization with employees and logistics and customer service and all these things. I basically took that, and I took my experience at Enterprise, took my experience at 360 Technology Group, and then I started to develop those relationships in the industry, and then that's where Sony came in.
Nice.
So I was a ES sales trainer, ES sales rep for Sony Electronics for between, I want to say 5 and 6 years, something like that. I had got laid off a couple times while I was at Sony. I got rehired a couple times. I had transferred from Sony Electronics to Sony Pro, and I did 2 years over there working in the higher education market. I was on the Tiger team for 4K television. I was on the Tiger team for 4K projection, right? So all of these technologies I've seen launch in their inception. I've been part of those teams. From Sony, I went to NEC, which is one of that period of my career, man. It's just awesome. You were saying?
Yeah, I want to jump in really quickly, because you mentioned Enterprise, right? So you were working for a resi integrator, pulling wire, became a project manager. Then you get hired after college into Enterprise's great training program. It's amazing how many
Mhm.
times I see enterprise on resumes, and
Yeah, man.
um, they just do a great job. And I think
They really do.
they like to hire. I think they do a good job hiring as well. Like they definitely know what
Yeah.
they're looking for.
Yeah.
But the 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 path into Sony, like, kind of skipped over that a little bit. How did we get into Sony? How did we decide
All right. So
like we want to go work for the largest name brand manufacturer,
yeah.
right?
So I had always considered, especially when I was with 360 Technology Group and I was pulling wire and I was project management, I was exposed to all these different brands. And Sony was always one of the premier brands
Right.
for us, right? Whether it be projection, XBR television, so on and so forth. It's always one of the premier brands. And I'd always in the back of my mind, I said, man, that's a dream job. Like to work for a global company like that, who's got their foot on innovation, who's really making strides in different areas to try to become competitive. And I said, wow, that would be awesome. But I never really pursued it.
Mhm.
So long story short, I am standing at the Cincinnati airport, and I was working for Enterprise at the Cincinnati airport. I was checking in cars in the rain, and I had someone that I literally just started talking to because I think the printer was messing up. We all been there. The printer
Right.
was messing
Of
up
course.
for me to print their receipt, and I had to do a little bit of small talk. And he turned out to be one of my fraternity brothers. Right. He was just in the same frat from
Right.
college. He went to a different school, whatever. We didn't know each other before this. He was in pharmaceutical sales. And he asked me, he said, if you ever think about doing anything different, I like your energy.
Mhm.
Right. He said, give me a call. So got his number, got his info. I worked for him in pharma sales for probably 6 months.
Okay.
And the same gentleman told me, he said, hey, I had this weird opportunity come across my desk. I know you're into electronics. He said, it's for Sony. And I said, really? He was like, yeah. And mind you, this is my director.
Wow.
Giving me
Yeah.
a job recommendation, job opportunity. So he hooked me up with the recruiter, and it was actually through MarketStar, which was a sales organization that Sony had partnered with
Mhm.
to push their ES level product.
Okay.
Wound up interviewing, got the position, worked for MarketStar for literally 30 days. And then Sony terminated the MarketStar contract and brought everybody on direct.
Oh, nice.
So now I'm a direct employee at Sony, and I was able to really parlay that into getting all the way to Sony Pro. So yeah, that's how it happened, man. It was an interesting set of circumstances.
Right.
It really was.
Yeah. No, that's that's quite the story. It's funny. I remember watching some video where one guy was talking about how he carries business cards with him, and it says, "I hire rock stars," right? And
Wow.
if he's ever at like a restaurant or an enterprise and just sees somebody who's going above and beyond, or just has like all the right soft skills,
Absolutely.
passes them the card, and it's funny because we talk about like how hard it is to find good talent in our industry and how we need to spread out.
Right.
So I think that's maybe a good, look, you got into it, 2 steps removed,
Mhm.
but based off of you being a rock star and being a really like great performer and somebody noticing your effort and your talent, right? And then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
you get to the pharmaceutical sales, then you get into Sony, and here you are today. It's a great way for our industry to grow. Just if you see talent
Yeah.
out there, make that
That's right.
introduction.
I tell you this, Leo.
Yeah.
Using that same approach.
Yeah.
I had a guy come install fiber optic cabling at my house from the internet company here in Cincinnati 3 years ago. And what I would consider his bedside manner, right?
Mhm.
Right. For lack of a better term.
Right.
He was courteous. He told me every piece of the process. He asked me certain questions. He asked me where I wanted things to go. That is now one of my employees.
Yeah, exactly.
And I found him because he was installing fiber optic cable in my basement.
Right.
And I said, hey, if you ever think about doing something different or this doesn't work out, you give me a call. And he called me at this point, it's about 14 months ago, he called me.
Right.
And we got him on, and he's on a job site at this very moment.
Right.
Leading the install team.
And I'm sure he's one of your best employees, right? Because you saw the work
Absolutely.
ethic, right? So that's good.
Absolutely.
when you look back over your career, were there certain points, like certain just inflection points, things that you remember that you did or you somehow accomplished that really boosted your career? We're about to jump into Sharp NEC. That's
Hmm.
where I met you.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, you were doing great things there. Let's talk about that. Like, what were you doing, to really accelerate and promote and rise, right?
Yeah. Specifically at Sony, I'll go back one step. Specifically at Sony, the key differentiator for me to get into certain rooms in front of certain individuals was the fact that I had integrator experience,
Hmm.
right? So having that 5-6 year time frame where I was with Custom Home Innovations, 360 Technology Group, whatever, being able to talk about that in real world scenarios while I was in front of other integrators across the Mid Atlantic was huge. Now at NEC, it was getting in and understanding what was the problem that I was hired to solve.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times when we apply for positions, when we think about job postings, when we read through the description, we're 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 looking at it very one-sided. We're looking at it as what can that organization do for me? When the reality is it is an exchange, right? So for me, it was what problem did they hire me to solve? And of course, getting to that answer was way deeper than just the initial interview or talking to some directors and VPs. I actually had to get hired to understand the inner workings of the organization, to talk to some other high level executives to say, hey, why am I here?
Right.
Why did you bring Mark Knox in? Like,
Right.
you know where I came from. You know my reputation. You obviously seen my list of qualifications. What intrigued you about me and what problem did you hire me to solve? That key right there has been paramount to my entire existence in this industry. I am a problem solver natively. And once you embrace solving problems, especially solving problems for organizations, large organizations, whether it's one bite at a time or you try to get the whole nugget, that's where you build value. So for NEC, it was projector sales at the time were in the absolute dump.
Right.
Like they were almost non-existent. Myself and Matt Greaser, who was my counterpart on the West Coast,
Hmm.
who I came in with, we both came from Sony. We were hired to turn that business around. And by 2017, we were President's Club
Right.
because that business was turned around.
What?
Right. And it was really just, again, if you hired me to solve a problem, I'm going to spend all my energy doing that. Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, if you give me carte blanche to say this is what needs to happen, or this is the result we're looking for, shall I say, I'm going to spend all of my energy doing that, chasing that, focusing in on the actual problem that needs to be solved. Every person that's hired in this industry, believe it or not, is hired to solve a problem.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're not just hired to fill a head count.
Right.
Right. I know you know that, and I know you stress that to your candidates. But the quicker we understand that as industry professionals, the more value we'll have, not only for our organizations but also for our stakeholders.
Yeah. And it's pretty simple, right? Like you have to understand what the results are that they're looking for from you, right?
That's right.
And then
That's right.
really focus on achieving those results, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
why they think you need to be there. And you talk about solving problems and having that integrator experience. I think that obviously helped a lot because you understood what the problems were. And sometimes people,
Yeah.
I always think about veterinarians, like how do they diagnose, right? Like it's not like the
Mm-hmm.
animal could sit there and tell them, right, like what the issue is, and hey, like, right. But um and sometimes you have to be that veterinarian and just kind of understand and have that
That's
experience.
right.
But more importantly, as you mentioned, you're there to solve problems, not have your own
Right.
personal motivations, right? You're there to help other
Mm-hmm.
people and solve other people's problems. And you know with no surprise, obviously, you do well, right? And you advance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you worked for some big companies, you worked for some small companies.
Sure.
Um, what were some of the biggest differences that you had to adapt to, and what did you see that maybe the bigger companies are doing better, or maybe the smaller companies? Like what do you feel? as an employee of both sides that you need to go in and really understand,
Sure.
like
So,
what you're getting into.
and this is just from where I sat, right? So if
Right.
anybody, the executive hears this and they completely disagree, it is what it is. But from where I sat,
Right.
larger organizations have a couple advantages when it comes to solving those problems. They can afford to take more missteps than smaller organizations, right? So a larger company can afford to throw Jello at the wall a few more times than a smaller company can.
Right.
They can also afford to let's say afford. They have more resources to allocate to solving those problems, right? So it does a couple of things. One, it gives you an advantage because you can make more mistakes and you got more people, but it also makes you move a lot slower, right? Because either you have to run it up the chain and there's a lot more links in the chain to get to the top, to get to the actual decision-making process.
Yeah.
Or it just takes a long time because internal systems or culture is just not, there's no urgency, right? So some organizations, yes, there is urgency, but they still got to run up the ladder. They still have to make sure that they're managing the resources effectively, so on and so forth. But in general, the larger companies I work for, those are the two main differences.
And
as far as the smaller organizations, go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, I was going to just jump in. Like, and when you say mistakes, like, is it mistakes or is it more experimenting? Like, hey, we could try more things. We can.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Well, it's
because
honestly,
those mistakes, at that size and that scale are really expensive, right?
They are. And the thing about a mistake is you don't know it's a mistake until it's a mistake.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's say we all have been in situations. If you've been in this industry or worked for a manufacturer long enough, you've been in a situation where they want you to launch a product. They want you to evangelize a product that is not where it needs to be. Right. And that's what I mean when I say they can afford to make mistakes, because we've all seen half-baked products come out of engineering. And we've all seen the sales managers push those products onto the sales team to get out to the people.
Right. And
at its inception,
right,
that is not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But
I think there's a bigger issue there, because I think they know it too, right? But there's this revenue pressure that they need to come out.
Exactly.
They need to hit these revenue numbers. They need to come out with new products.
Exactly.
Right. So
yep. And that's what I mean by making mistakes, because that's a mistake. Right. Shouldn't have did it, shouldn't happen.
I don't
but they can
I think it's worse than a mistake. I feel like when manufacturing, it's like because it's intentional, right? Like it, like you're coming out with a half-assed product, right?
It's careless.
Yeah, look, as a former integrator myself, like I would have much rather those companies be like, hey, we're delaying, right, our release.
Absolutely.
Because we got to work out these issues before we ship.
So there you go.
Right.
They and that's a conscious decision that they make, though, to release that product knowing that it's half baked. And that's what I mean. Smaller organizations,
you
can't do that.
Yeah, they're dead. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't do that, right?
Right.
Now, it's the other advantage smaller organizations have in general is just they're nimble. A lot of them are really nimble, right? The decision maker CEOs have an open door policy. You can give them a call on Teams, ask them a question, and get things done pretty fast.
Right.
If something needs to be changed, if you need to course correct, if you need to make a simple change, let's say it's something with the programming or the packaging or something weird, it can pretty much get done, in a couple of days worth of work.
Yeah.
Right. You don't necessarily have to run it up the chain and run it across the ocean and back and all these kind of things. So they're more nimble. They're more agile.
It's funny. It's funny you're coming from this perspective, because like in my mind, I always thought of like these big companies have to be so conservative, right? Because they have a big reputation, they have this big brand, and to change directions, you're literally, turning around a big ship. It takes a lot of energy and inertia to do that. Where smaller companies, could be more innovative, right, and experiment more and try things, right. But it's kind of interesting that but you're right. Like they can't when they're innovative, you're right though. When they just can't fail, right? They just can't.
Right.
I think that's the
Because
big
of their resources.
right. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Because of the resources. I mean, they can change direction or 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 change course,
yeah.
but the stakes are a lot higher
Right. And yeah,
for a
when
smaller
you're
company.
a small company and you have a bad batch or you have a bad year, or, where the products you release
Hmm.
that could put you under, right? Like a Sony,
Exactly.
a Sony and Samsung or whoever, they can withstand it, and and then, the too big to fail type of thing. But
Yep.
yeah, so you're right. But like as an employee, right? So you're working for both
Hmm.
companies.
Hmm.
Um, like, and I don't want to get too specific and
No, it's okay.
right? Well, like I don't want this to turn into like, well, at this company, right? Like I want to be a little bit more general and just say like, you know, I I, I feel like when you're at a small company, you have the opportunity to do more responsibilities, get out of your lane a little bit more, right? And impact the company a little bit more as well.
So that's a great point. That's a great point. And the actual right word is impact.
Hmm.
So when you're at a smaller organization, for me, I can see the impact that my activities had on a regular basis. I can see that impact, whether I did a lunch and learn, a webinar, a trade show, whatever. I can see the impact
Hmm.
pretty clearly
Right.
because it was like there was no other touch points but Mark Knox.
Yeah.
He's the reason why X, Y, and Z ordered this amount of product or whatever, right? Whereas with the larger organizations, it takes a little bit longer to realize that impact.
Hmm.
And then two, just based on just scale in general, the numbers that you're trying to achieve when you're with a larger organization are a lot harder to impact than a smaller organization,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So $500 million, me trying to affect $500 million,
Right.
yeah, that's a tough one.
Right.
But me trying to affect $1 million, I can see that,
Yeah. Well,
right?
and bigger is not always better, right? Like you mentioned, you go join an organization, you bring in an extra 20-30 million dollars into $1 billion company, they don't care, right? You go to a small
Yeah.
company, you bring in $2 million more than what they're expecting. Now all of a sudden, you're a
Hmm.
lifesaver. So I you
That's
know
right.
I sometimes think, working for smaller companies could be, like, again, more impact, more exposure, more direct line of communication. Like there's just so many different advantages. It's not like, but then
Yeah.
again, working for the big companies, obviously you got to do some bigger, better things as well. Let me
Yeah.
ask you about your career. Um, you made a jump that I think more people should do. I talk to a lot of
Okay.
sales engineers that have great personalities, that have great customer facing skill set.
Hmm.
But they just don't want the quota pressure, right? They don't want to carry the bag and be responsible. Um,
Yeah.
talk about that. Talk about
Yeah.
your journey from being a sales engineer into the sales executive, and what you felt was different, and the good, the bad, the ugly from it.
Yeah. So it really comes down to the load that you are able and willing to carry,
Hmm.
right? I mean, there's a certain level of pressure that comes with being a sales engineer or a territory rep
Hmm.
that is totally different than being a vice president of sales and being responsible for an entire country or an entire region,
Sure.
right? So you really have to understand who you are and you have to understand what you're capable of, and you can't lie to yourself. You,
Right.
you you have to be honest, right? So if you're not equipped, if you don't feel like you have the capacity, either you go get more training
Hmm.
or more education, or you make the most of where you are. Now, for me specifically, I was in a position where, and just hopping back to where we just talked about, working for larger organizations first and then smaller organizations after was a great recipe for me
Yeah.
because I came into that smaller organization with a global big business approach.
Hmm.
Right now, I did have to adjust some of my techniques to fit, but it really helped me kind of boil down what was really important to sales and the process and to only apply that to the smaller organization I was with. Now, if I take that and go a step further, working for a smaller organization, and now being an entrepreneur,
Right.
I had to do the exact same thing. Had to adjust my approach, but ultimately I boiled down the things that made us successful at the small organization, and I've taken that into my own company. Right. So when we look at individuals who was like, man, you probably could, run your own integration company.
Yeah.
A lot of them probably could work in the business really well, but on the business is where they would fall short.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother aspect.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can do the function of the company, but can you run a company?
Right. A totally different skill set being a really good employee versus being an operator. Right. And we'll get into that,
right.
But what I kind of want to dig into is the jump from being a sales engineer into being like a regional sales manager. A lot of the sales engineers fear it, right? They're afraid of it because they're afraid of the quota pressure. They're afraid of doing the business development and the cold calling and stuff like that. But what was your experience? Like how did that jump? How did it work out for you?
It is hard. And I mean, that is one of the concerns for a hiring manager that's looking at a sales engineer is to say, well, you've never been directly responsible for a quota before. So how am I supposed to know? Right. And I faced that challenge. You know that very well.
Right.
For me, it was really just trying to expand, man. It was trying to expand what I was capable of, because you get to a certain point in sales engineering where you're actually the main point of contact for a lot of these people.
Agreed.
Like you're already doing the job.
Yeah.
Right. You're just doing it. You're hitting it from a technical aspect. So I think, if you are in that sales engineer role, to lean into the sales part,
right.
Lean into the sales part, lean into the relationship part. Creating friendships is critical, because then it's less friction on a sales conversation. Yeah. Creating opportunities to meet with those individuals at trade shows and to really be a trusted resource.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. Right. As a sales engineer, you're a trusted advisor already, because you're looking at a technical aspect. And if you can roll that into and lean into your sales ability, whether they're minimal or whether you're a rock star,
right.
Eventually you will develop what you need to develop to have successful relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I feel like there's a lot of sales engineers that should be looking to make that jump. Obviously the compensation jumps as well. But like you said, it expands your skill set, expands your relationships, and it's crazy. Like you talk to these sales engineers and they're like, all right, what do you do? Well, first I go and I do the customer needs analysis, and then I put the quote together, then I go present the quote, and then I and then I do post sales. What did the sales guy do? And of course, look, I don't want to pick on the sales guys either. They do their part, but so much of the sales process the sales engineers are already involved in.
That's right.
In my opinion, they shouldn't be afraid to make that jump, or at least try it, see if it's for them. They could always go back to sales engineering after, but I think it's a good career move and a good way to grow.
Yep. I've seen it time and time again through different organizations. Some of the most successful sales engineers are that because they have a great balance between technical and sales.
Right.
And some of the best salespeople are that because they have a great balance between sales and technical. Right. So there's this middle ground that I've always tried to walk that line. That's really made my career is really having the sales and the technical and being able to speak both languages. And I think if, like you said, if more people would lean into that and really try to get closer to that middle ground, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, you mean, as you talked about from the very beginning, you're there to solve somebody's problem, right? And, dealers want their salespeople to be knowledgeable, right, and technical, and be able to answer their questions when they call and not have to get pushed over to tech support or to a sales engineer or whatever. And I think it also builds trust, right? Like, what you're talking about. Like you've been there, you've done that, you understand it, you've hooked it up, so
right.
Yeah. And I think it's and that's why I also think some sales engineers can make that jump and be really, really good at being
They can.
a salesperson because they have that trustworthiness, and technical knowledge that will allow them to build really strong relationships. So you made that jump, you took that leap, and I guess that wasn't like scary enough. So you decided to take a bigger, even scarier leap, and start your own um, integration firm. Talk about that, man, you talk about how that all went.
All right, so I'm gonna give you the raw and unadulterated truth, and that really comes from, I would say, man, going back to 2019, maybe early 2020. Now, when I was with NEC, which became Sharp NEC,
right,
I was responsible for the eastern half of the United States and Canada and the Caribbean and Latin America projectors.
right.
Okay. So I was a sales engineer. I was a trainer, whatever I needed to be to sell projectors. I supported my sales reps, my channel partners, all of that. Well, when DirectView LED really started taking off, right? So now we're talking 2019, 2020, 2021.
Right.
I really started to see the writing on the wall. And I said, you know what? I have successfully earmarked myself as a projector wizard, projector genius. Everybody knows me as a projector guy.
Right.
Well, that technology is great, but it's not innovating other than laser, and it's not expanding because DirectView LED and large format screens are really taking over, right? When it comes to large images. And of course, I had all these techniques and stories and things that I would do to sell projectors, and it worked most of the time. But as we get closer to 2021, 2022, I'm like, all right, it's time to pivot. It's time to pivot, right? And that's where it started. That's where it started, because I knew, I was like, man, this isn't it. So that's when we started cooking Pixel Audio Video. Pixel Audio Video was a side hustle, and we weren't doing anything but hanging TVs, and we were pretty good at it.
Right.
But that's all we were doing, hanging TVs. That's it.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I had the skills to do all the other stuff, but the clients that I was getting, the ones from Angie's List and Indeed or not Indeed, Thumbtack,
yeah,
those guys, all they wanted was TVs hung, right? So we were making what I say vacation money. It was great. Well, when I joined the AV over IP company, that's when I knew I was on the clock. I was like, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to make the most of it, but this is not a long-term play. And to be honest, we knew that going into it, right? We knew it wasn't going to be a long-term play. I didn't think it was the tenure there was going to be as short as it was, but the opportunity to go full time with Pixel Audio Video presented itself because we were starting to have larger clients. We had just brought on our first custom home builder. We were getting some small business work. And I said, it's time to jump off the porch.
Yeah.
Now, scary as it was, I made sure I had a little bit of a runway, a little bit of savings to make sure that I could carry myself and I wasn't 100% relying on the business too soon. But I knew in order for this to work, I had to start drawing income from the business, because if I wasn't drawing income from the business, I was just playing myself and wasting time.
Right. You mean, look, right? You were. It's not easy to walk away from a 6-figure guaranteed benefit,
right?
Everything that comes with working for a larger corporation and starting your own as an entrepreneur. Yeah. I mean, like what? So obviously, side hustle turned into something that started growing and growing and growing.
Yep.
Still a pretty scary decision. At any point, did you ever think, or are you still maybe thinking, like, maybe we got to quit? maybe this wasn't
every day,
right?
Every day. I wouldn't be an entrepreneur if I didn't think, of a exit strategy every day. Yeah. But at the same time, every day I get reminded on why I'm doing this. Since I left Wirestorm, I have not updated my resume. I haven't reached out to you about anything. Right. I haven't taken the bait on anybody offering or anybody saying anything about any position. I had to be laser focused on this.
Yeah.
And that being, putting the blinders on has been the difference.
Right.
And again, I can look at the years that I was side hustle, and then I can look at the, almost 2 years that I've been full time, and we're like, I don't know, 8x revenue.
Nice.
Right. Just because I'm here full time.
Right.
So as we progress, as we get these wins, as we win these deals, that's what makes it less and less scary.
Right.
That's what makes it less and less scary. Yeah.
Whenever I talk to anyone who's thinking about starting their own business, and I've done it twice now. I always say you have to jump out of the plane without a parachute. You just have to.
That's right.
Because if there is any turning back, if there's anything that, if there's a safety net or a parachute or any way of going back into that comfort zone, you will, right? You have to know that there's no turning back. This is a commitment you made, and you will ride it until you go broke, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Let's talk about some of the stresses, and obviously this is fresher for you than it is for me, but like what were some of the stresses you hit? What were some of the milestones? What,
yeah.
As a early stage entrepreneur, what surprised you, or what did you learn, during the journey?
Well, just business in general. This goes for all business owners, small business owners. Once you get done with doing all the sexy stuff, as I call it, right. The website, the business cards, the logo. Once you get done with getting all your swag and all that kind of stuff,
all the fun stuff.
Then all the fun stuff. Yeah. Then you actually have to actually be responsible for the business.
Right.
Right. So for me, it was, hey man, I got a wife and 3 kids. I need healthcare. So I had to go down that road and figure the healthcare thing out. Then you got to figure out the tax thing, the accounting thing, the banking thing, insurance, right? Workers' comp.
Yeah.
All of it, man. It can become a lot. Now, I will say I am blessed in this situation, and I can't speak enough about the power of a partnership. I have a business partner. I am a co-owner.
Right.
My business partner, his personality type is complementary to mine. He is a type A personality. He is spreadsheets and numbers, and he keeps things really, really tight.
Good.
Right?
Yeah.
Without that partnership, I probably would just be your everyday trunk slammer, making good money, but still not actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing in order to scale the company.
Yeah.
Right. So those honestly are a lot of the stressors. It's just the business part. Now, of course, we can get into dealing with your manufacturers and your distributors and trying to get bigger credit lines and managing employees and all the things that I never had to do in corporate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The things there's a lot of things you just don't think of.
Right.
I had a,
in my mind, there's 3 jobs, right? Like you have to be the visionary, right? And come up with this new company and be creative and figure out how you're going to go to market and differentiate yourself. And like you said, all the sexy and fun stuff, like the marketing, the logo, the this, that.
Yep.
Then you have to be the operator, which sounds like that's your business partner, right? Being very detailed, keeping tight controls.
And to your point, I'll give you an example. I have 3 pairs of shoes that are always in my truck or on my feet.
Nice.
I got 3 pairs. I have my business shoes.
Right.
Okay. Those are the ones that I put on when I got to go to the Chamber of Commerce meeting or the Chamber of Commerce luncheon and talk about my company for 60 seconds or whatever that event might be. Then I have my athletic shoes or my gym shoes. That's for when I'm walking around the office. That's when I'm managing my guys. We're doing inventory. We're cleaning out the trailer. We're trying to get the demo space together, whatever. And then I got my mud boots because from time to time I got to get out my truck, put my mud boots on, go to a job site and get dirty.
That's great. That's great.
And that might be in the same day. Yeah. All of that might be in the same day.
Yeah. It's funny because it's so funny because here I am saying, it's 3 jobs and here you have 3 pairs of shoes. I got 3 pairs of boots, man. That was a great way to put it. It is 3 jobs and I got the shoes to prove it, Leo. Yeah, no, for sure. And look, in my mind, the three for me at least is the visionary, right? Keep thinking of ways to be creative and
Hmm.
differentiating, kind of like your chamber of commerce shoes, right? And
Hmm.
then I the the operator, right? Where you got to do the payroll, you got to do
Yeah.
the taxes, you got to do this, you got to do that,
Right.
and none of it's fun, right? But you got to get it done. And then the third
Hmm.
one is the day to day, right? It's
Yep.
that, hey, from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m., right? And there's no 9 to 5, right? Um,
Nah, that's out the window.
yeah. People always like, one of my favorite jokes is it's like I have a terrible boss. He never gives me any time off, right? Like, but anyway, so the third one's the day to day, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes that becomes hard for entrepreneurs, especially, right? Because you want to be
Hmm.
creative and you want to be that visionary and you want to do the fun stuff, and then you actually got to grind. You got to grind every day
You
and do
have
the
to.
work.
That's right.
Yeah. Um, what's been most rewarding so far for you?
Man, listen, when I was the corporate guy, which I thoroughly enjoyed most of it. I don't let me think,
Yeah.
don't think that that wasn't the case.
No.
I thoroughly enjoyed most of it. But it did get to a point where travel was becoming a lot.
Hmm.
And that's when my twins came. So now I had 3 children,
Yeah.
right? My wife is also an entrepreneur, which adds a whole nother level of complexity. She owns a couple salons,
Nice.
and being away from home, my last full year of corporate, I slept in, and I did the math, man. I slept in my bed 69. No, I slept in my bed. No, I traveled 69% of the time.
Yeah.
So 69% of the business nights of that year,
Right.
I was in a hotel room.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was huge. Now, last year, I'm proud to say that 97% of the year I slept in my own bed.
Right.
And the 3% that I didn't sleep was when I went to Cedia in Denver. And that was only 3 nights or
Right.
a night and a half or something.
Yeah.
My wife came with me to Infocom last year. She went with me to another trade show in Pittsburgh last year.
Nice.
So I count those as being in my bed. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But yeah, like, dude, I coached flag football for my son last season and didn't miss a practice, didn't miss a game.
Right. No, that's
right. So
that's the biggest thing for me.
that's
too.
it, man.
Yeah.
That it's rewarding. Yeah.
To me, that's one of the biggest reasons why I love being an entrepreneur, right? I joke that I don't get any time off. All 3 of my children played competitive sports throughout their whole, middle school and high school careers. I think between the 3 of them, um, the total number of games missed, I could count on maybe one hand,
Yeah,
So
man.
it's like
Yeah.
I was there for it. I didn't miss it, and
Yeah.
I think you can't put a value on it. Now that I'm about to
Nope.
be an empty nester, I'm like, all right, it's grind season again. Like once the kids are out of the
Yeah.
house, I could rededicate and refocus even harder. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't miss those moments.
Yeah. And then I got one more for you, Leo. So
Yeah.
one of, between me and my partner, our mission in this, one of the things we want to do in this company is raise up the next generation of AV integrators or just people in the industry, right? Like, we just want to help. So we've connected with 2 different career centers here in the Cincinnati area.
Okay.
And so far we've hired full-time a gentleman who was in his senior year of high school, who was in the IT program, and
Nice.
we've hired him on full-time.
All right.
Right. And he literally today he's going to finish his QSIS level 1 training.
Amazing.
And then he's going to start probably Control 4 after that. But he's a bright young man.
Yeah.
Right. And just to be able to see somebody say, hey, this is what I want to do in my career. That's something that I've been doing for 20 years. Man, talk about rewarding, because now he's looking up to me like a big brother. He's like, hey, man, how do I do X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, man, to be able to give somebody that opportunity is awesome.
Right. I think, as we get older and we talk about the 20 plus years, right? It's amazing, how much, when you look back, the rewarding accomplishments usually aren't our own, right? It's when we were able to
That's
help
right.
somebody else accomplish
That's
something,
right.
so it's,
Yeah.
so let's talk about, wait, hold on. So this is, this wasn't on on my show list. So let's talk about this career center. Cause
Yeah, man.
I think people need to know about this and try to replicate it in their local cities.
Yep. Yep. So what we did, there's a career center called Butler Tech here. It's in Butler County, which is the county that our company is located in. And we went to the career center, just literally went up to the front desk and say, hey, who is in charge of the business partner program? Because we know that all of these career centers partner with local businesses, sometimes through the chamber, sometimes independently. So we got this person's contact information. We sat down, had a couple conversations, and they said, hey, what are you looking for? I said, well, we have an immediate need for a junior systems installer that we will completely train. We will obviously completely pay, right? They'll be insured. But we have a need right now. So they're like, hey, well, why don't you come in? Why don't you present to both IT cohorts? Because, in a career center, IT is the closest thing that we can get to custom integration, right? So we were looking at the electrical trade, but the electrical trade is pretty locked in with certifications and things. So we went IT. So we're like, okay, we presented to both of those cohorts, and out of probably 60 students, we had 10 that the instructors signed off on and said, hey, these would be good people to at least have a conversation with. They lined up a total of 7 people. I went in, interviewed 7 students in one day, and was able to identify 3, made offers to 2. One of them accepted. The other one, we're still waiting on him to get his driver's license. Right. That's where we are. We're waiting on him to get his driver's license. But I say that because that was in October, and the gentleman has been with us since, and he doesn't have to go to class anymore.
Right.
He's a senior. Yeah. He graduates in a couple of weeks, and working for Pixel Audio Video, at least I want to say 10 hours a week, but we give him double that. He doesn't have to go to class.
Yeah.
Right. Because the goal of a career center is to do what? Get in a career.
Yeah. No. And I think that, and look, I think that's huge. And, the trades are coming back, right? They're with the cost of college and the shortages of electricians and HVAC and plumbers. And obviously we've had a shortage of techs since I started my company in 99, right? Like it's always been hard to find technicians, and we've always had to hire, other trades and train them from scratch and try to find, people. So it's great that you're doing that. And I think there is a career, like you mentioned, you could start off by getting manufacturing certifications, right? QSIS, and then Control 4, and then eventually get a CTS, and for that kid, he's going to graduate high school. He's going to work for you for a bunch of years, and hopefully for a long time, right? But even if he doesn't, you've already put him on a path where now he's
on that's right.
Right. And now he could go work for manufacturers. He could go work for commercial, resi, whatever it is. There's just so many different opportunities, and he'll have 0 college debt, which is
right, man.
Amazing. Right.
He'll have 0 college debt and a ton of experience.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. Good. And it's that easy, right? Just go meet with your local career center.
The career centers are trying to get people careers. And if you've got one to offer, they will gladly recommend students for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the conversation is important too. Hey, I don't have a job for you. I have a career for you. Right. And people got to talk that way, because I always hear, hey, I have a job. No, don't offer jobs, offer a career. Right. Talk about the career path. So, all right, cool. Yep. Look, you've been in this industry for 20 plus years, right? What's it called? Obviously it's not a surprise that you're, can't really hide it, that you're a minority in this space, right?
Right.
How's that been for you? Especially from 20 years to now, what have you seen? What's improved? What pressures or what did you feel was different for you than maybe, a colleague of yours that that isn't a minority?
Yeah. So, I think, had I never started working for that company when I got out of high school, I probably wouldn't even know that this industry existed. And that's
Mm,
because the culture that I grew up in and where I grew up geographically, this is not a thing,
right.
right? Smart homes are not a thing, right? But
Hmm.
conference room technology is not, it's not a thing, right? I grew up in the inner city. So trying to understand that this was even an option,
Yeah.
that was put into me at a very young age. Now, as far as the industry has been in general open arms. It really has. It's been open arms for me personally.
Hmm.
Um, one of the things that I love to see is to see other minorities on the show floor at Infocom or at Cedia or wherever it may be, and try to understand what their story is. Because I want to know, I want to say, how'd you get into this?
Right.
Or even when it comes to women in the industry, right? I
Hmm.
want to know, like, because in my opinion, women in this industry have it even tougher than a lot of minorities do. Just to be honest,
A
just because
hundred
this is
per.
a male dominated
Yeah.
industry,
Yeah.
right? And obviously, I'm a male, so I can fit into that box.
Right.
Um, but the reality is, it's been open arms. Now, what I will say is, I've always been disappointed with numerous manufacturers, ones I've worked for and ones I haven't, that haven't done more to find students coming out of HBCUs,
Hmm.
historically Black colleges and universities.
Right.
And this goes all the way up to the sales level. There's not a lot of manufacturers or organizations that even go try to sell to HBCUs,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Your Howards, your Hamptons, your FAMUs, and so on and so forth. And my question has always been, why not? Do
Right.
you just assume that they don't have money? Do you just assume that they're not on the cutting edge of technology? Right. So one of the things that I did when I was working for these organizations was, if I was responsible for higher education, those were some of the places I was going. Right. Because
Hmm.
ultimately I wanted to let them know that the manufacturer knew that they existed. And I wanted to make sure that my people were getting taken care of, flat out.
Right. Yeah.
So I think the industry does not have a intentional negligence of minorities. I just think it just happens, right? That's just the way it's always been.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you
Look,
almost have to push doors open when
right.
you're a minority in this industry.
Yeah. Look, I think our industry is really bad to begin with, in just letting people know that we exist, right? We just do not do a
Hmm.
good job. Look,
Hmm.
I came from a very middle class upbringing too, maybe even upper middle class, and I had no idea about the AV industry, and yeah,
Yeah.
like a bunch of my friends had stereo systems and stuff like that, but like it wasn't like a thing, right?
What a thing.
Um, and I could understand that in less privileged communities, you would even know
Hmm.
less of it, right?
That's
And then
right.
the colleges, right? Like like here you are, we're talking about going out to career centers, going out to colleges, career fairs. Like my daughter who just was graduating college, and all the career fairs that go through. Like I never see any AV companies listed, ever. Like
Right.
you see all of
Right.
the pharmaceuticals, you see all the finance companies, you
Hmm.
see all
Hmm.
IT companies, but there's no AV
Hmm.
companies going to college career fairs and saying, "Hey,
Right.
like there's opportunities here for you to come and grow and join our industry." And I can understand how it's that much worse, when it comes towards minorities and HBCUs. You
Yep.
mentioned that you got to kind of like push your way in, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that. Like
Yeah.
what did you feel like you had maybe had to do a little bit differently? Even though it's open armed and welcoming, and I think, in general, we have a pretty progressive industry. It is dominated by
Hmm.
middle aged old white men, but like most of most of most of the people I meet are pretty open minded and progressive
Yeah.
and
Sure they
right,
are.
but there's
Same.
there's
Hmm.
still challenges, no doubt. Like what have you experienced, or what do you look back and be like, man, like this was something that I always had to overcome, or maybe just didn't sit right with you or
Yep.
whatever.
Coming into any organization I've ever come into, the first thing I had to do was establish my authority as the expert in that area,
Mhm.
and to make it clear that yes, I can still be coached and taught, but at the same time, I'm probably going to be doing most of the coaching and teaching. Right. So for me, it was when I say push a door open, it was when I come into your organization, you will feel it. There will be a force. Right. There will be you'll feel a breeze, and something as simple as my first couple months on the job at NEC, I'm having either meetings with all the sales reps, or I'm jumping on a channel team call, and I'm establishing who I am, what I'm here to do, and what my intention is. Right. So I'm not going to come in passively. You're going to feel me in your organization. The other thing I would say is when you are in those rooms, when you're in a QBR, when you're in a sales meeting, you have to be assertive. You have to speak up. You have to ask questions. You already stick out, right? You're on a Teams call and they got all the windows popped up. You're probably going to be the only brown one,
right?
And that's okay. But don't be the quiet brown one. You know, speak up. If you got a question, ask the question. If you got a suggestion, suggest.
Yeah.
Right. So again, it's being assertive, making sure that you're being noticed for the right reasons, and also just in general carrying the torch, man.
Yeah.
This is what we do. This is what we've had to overcome our entire lives. It's no different when you get into a global organization. You just have to be who you are, and you can't suppress you can't suppress who you are to make other people comfortable.
100%. Right.
So will feathers get ruffled? Maybe, but those people who have the ruffled feathers, those are the ones who don't have your best your best. What am I trying to say? Those are the ones who don't have your best interest in mind. Yeah. Your best interest in mind.
Right. And look, I think that's great advice. I think that's great advice for everybody, especially, minorities and women. Right. But it's good advice for everybody. You were hired for a reason. Be yourself, and if being yourself isn't, man, like, can you imagine having to go to work every day and pretend to be somebody else? I know
people who do it every day. I know people who do it every day.
I don't know how they can live with that without being so miserable about it. But yeah, no, especially for minorities, I look at some of the personalities that are emerging in our space right now, and they're on LinkedIn and they're influencers, and they're out there and they're doing it with their own personality, their own flavor, and it's great. It's great.
That's right.
And everybody, and I think people actually, man, we there's so many boring people in our industry, right? It's
we got enough of those.
Yeah. Bring some more personality, bring some color, some flavor, some this, that, right? It's
yep.
Hey, before we wrap up, I just kind of want to, you just gave some great words of wisdom. Any other advice you'd give somebody who wants to grow in this industry, or who might feel a little stuck?
It's a good question. So the thing that's made me the most successful in my corporate career, and this is anybody can do what I'm about to say, is I was intentional about making people's jobs around me easier. Okay. My goal was to go into an organization and make somebody else's job that much easier.
Interesting.
So if I had to do more talking on the conference call than the sales guy, I'm going to do it. If I need to meet with somebody and I can come to them versus them coming to me, I'm going to do it. Right. When you make somebody else's job around you easier, when that person leaves your organization and goes to their next stop on this AV train, now you have an ally and a friend.
Right.
So I can guarantee you that next month now, when I walk through the show hall at Infocom, I'm going to be giving out hugs and handshakes probably every 25 paces, because I've made that many friends and allies in the industry, because my goal is to make your job easier, not harder.
Yeah.
Right.
And I started the show with that. Like, hey, everybody I've ever talked, if your name ever comes up, oh man, that guy's the best. Like, he's the best. It's great working with him, this and that. So
that's it, man. I'll be honest, Leo, I don't go to Infocom primarily to see new technology. I can do that online.
Yeah.
I go to Infocom because it's a family reunion.
Yeah, I'm gonna get in
And
trouble.
that's
I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna say, what new technology?
well, you know,
Have you
in
seen
general.
anything new in the last 5 years? Like, like,
Uh,
yeah,
um,
bit,
look,
little bit. Yeah,
if I stretch, I could say maybe the hologram thing, but I don't have a market for that.
right. Now, and that's a pet peeve of mine that, and I'm going to keep banging that drum and just saying, like, um, especially at Cedia, like, Cedia has been really, really disappointing to me, but, the industry stopped innovating, right? It's just starting to
That's the
tweak,
issue, man.
right? And
Yeah.
it's waiting for Silicon Valley and the IT markets
Hmm.
to innovate for us, and then we're going to go, so now, like we used to be the innovators. We used to be the ones that were coming out with the latest and greatest and the coolest gadgets, and the
Exactly.
ones that thought out of the box and
Yep.
took the risks. And now it's like, oh, like, oh, well, let's see what Amazon comes out with. Right? It's just like,
Hmm.
all right,
Yeah. No, it's that part is disappointing.
yeah.
That part is disappointing,
All right.
big time. So, yep.
Let's leave on a high note. Tell us what's next for Pixel AV. Like what are your thoughts? What are when
Yeah,
you
man.
look at the industry and the economy, like what are you excited about?
Yeah. So, as I'm sitting here recording with you right now, I'm in my new office space, which
Yeah,
we call the Strategy Center. Right, a totally different concept for a traditional AV integrator. I've been to so many integration showrooms,
yeah,
and I've heard the same thing. They're like, it's a waste of money. Don't do it.
right.
Right. So I decided we need an office space, but
Yep.
I'm going to do a strategy center. So directly behind me is a conference room where we meet with clients. Right. That's where we try to
Hmm.
look at their plans or their new house, and we lay stuff out and all that kind of stuff. I got some little demo pieces behind me on the shelf if you want to know what a 6-inch speaker looks like versus an 8-inch speaker.
Right.
Right. And then through this room over here that's the strategy room. So that's where me and my partner sit. It looks like a little mini command center. That's where we solve problems. That's where we evaluate
Right.
new technology.
Nice.
That's where we make the important decisions, right? So we've been in here about a month and a half, and that in itself is a success story and a win for us.
Yeah.
Again,
Good.
I told you
Congrats.
that we got some new guys, got a new technician team that's on the job site right now.
So you're growing.
And then of course this summer, man, we're growing, but we're being smart about it because we're in a lane that we're going to try to keep real tight. Like we don't do everything for everybody, but
right.
what we do well, we do really, really well.
That's good. That's
right.
Good.
We do really, really well.
Yeah. There was a saying that I used to say all the time, to my technicians and to my designers was, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Right. And,
That's right.
and got us out of a lot of bad projects and a lot of sticky situations.
Yep.
And yeah, by the way, 17 years of running my CE Pro top 100, top 50 company, never had a showroom.
Yeah.
Never had a showroom.
Yeah. I mean,
like I sold against showrooms, like you're going to walk in and you're going to get manipulated by the way that they set up the room and by the, this and that, or do you want to trust my professional opinion? Right. And my knowledge. So good for you,
That's
man.
Right.
I'm excited, Mark. I really appreciate the time you took today to speak with me and to record this episode. I'm excited to see all of your growth and success, and I think your story is really interesting and one that should be shared in this space. So, hey man, thanks again for coming on in.
Thank you, Leo. Appreciate you having me, man.
All right, and to the listeners, if you're still with us, appreciate you sticking through and hit that like, hit that subscribe button. 5-star reviews are always appreciated. And until next week, good luck on your hunts.